In today's show, we're jumping into Photoshop to take a look at some of the removal tools. This is a great way to remove unwanted objects from your photos. Hey everyone, welcome into Magnolia Photography SC. I'm Jeff House and I'm a wildlife photographer in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, we have spent the past several episodes talking a lot about photo editing, and even more specifically, my photo editing and the process that I use when editing my photos. And hopefully you have learned a lot from these conversations, because we've talked about noise reduction and image sharpening, and we've talked about how to use masking inside of Lightroom to add depth, texture, and dimension to our images to really bring them to that next level. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the tools we can use to remove unwanted objects from our photos. Now, this isn't something that you're going to need to do with every photo that you're editing, but there certainly is going to be times when you either need or want to remove certain details from your photos, because it's really going to improve the professionalism and the quality of them. Let's talk about something very quickly, though, when it comes to remove tools, because there's really two things that I want you to understand. These tools can be frustrating. They can just downright irritate the hell out of you because sometimes they lack a little bit of consistency. And what I mean is that you may have a go-to tool that you're using, and you may find that you edit the same photo 5 times using the same technique, same tool, same everything, and yet you get slightly different results with each time you do the tool. And so this is kind of the nature of the tool. You may do it, 10 times, and 9 times it might come out exactly the same, but there's going to be 1 or 2 times where you get a different result and you're just going to be left scratching your head. And that just happens. There's really no other way to say it. The other thing is you may have that go-to tool that you use, 99.9% of the time. And for some reason, you come across an image where it just isn't grasping it, right? It's just not giving you the result that you want. And it makes no sense, because it may not be the most complex edit you've asked it to do. It may have been in other situations that were far more complex where it performed far better. But for whatever reason, it's just not working. And sometimes you just have to switch to another tool. So it's good to know what tools you have in your arsenal to get the job done. And that's really what today's video is about. Now, before we jump into Photoshop, there are a couple of tools that I want to show you inside of Lightroom, because Lightroom has come a long way when we start talking about their object removal tools. And it used to be that Lightroom was all right. It was nothing to write home about. It could do simple tasks like maybe remove a pimple from someone's face, and it could do that without much issue. But as you started to get more complex with the removal tool, the results were, 50-50, if sometimes not even that good. And it really struggled a lot of times to get a good object removal, and you were left with a lot of artifacts, and it just took so much time to actually remove something from the photos. So you would have to take it into Photoshop so many times to remove the object, because Photoshop is just, it's a lot more detailed. It's a lot more precise when it comes to editing. And so it can be, a much more efficient option for you. That is still the case in many object removal situations today, but I think it is worth giving Lightroom Classic its props now, because it has gotten a lot better. Lightroom is now, implemented some of the features that we see inside of Photoshop. It's included some AI features when it comes to object removal, and so it's become much more powerful and much more accurate in many regards. And so what that's done really is it's eliminated a lot of the times that you've had to take your photo into Photoshop. You can now accomplish the same thing right inside Lightroom Classic, and it just saves a little bit of time from having to transfer the photo back and forth between Lightroom and Photoshop. So what I want to do is I want to take a look at this picture that we have up here. So we're going to jump in to Lightroom Classic right now and take a look at some of their tools. Okay, so if we jump into Lightroom Classic here and we go over to the eraser tool, what we're going to see is that we have 3 options for removing items. We have the eraser, we have the spot healing, and we have the clone tool. Now, the one thing that I don't want to do in this video is waste time with tools that don't work as good as others and really aren't going to be something that you ever use when doing these tasks. So the clone tool is that tool inside of Lightroom. I would use either the spot healing tool here or the eraser tool because they are far more effective. So let's take a look at the capabilities of each of these tools. So we'll click on the spot healing tool first. And what we're going to see is that we have a couple of options underneath it. We can change the size of our brush. We can change the feathering and the opacity. So if we do this, it'll change our brush size, as we can see. And of course, we can change our brush size using the left and right bracketing keys on our keyboard. And that is my choice. And that is what I'd recommend to you. Learn your keyboard shortcuts. So much faster, so much more efficient. But nonetheless, that's what we can do. The feathering, of course, will be, that will determine how much of, if we were to remove something, how much it blends in or how much it kind of sticks out, right? So we kind of have a circle with that brush. If we were to have 0 on our feathering and clicked on our image, it would almost create a circle with a hard edge. But as we go up to 100, it's going to create that circle, and the edges are going to be so soft that it's just going to blend, beautifully into the rest of the image. So I typically keep that somewhere between 70 and 100, and I usually work with it at 100 just because I like those real soft edges and I really like good blending into the image. And then we have the opacity, and of course, this will change how much of the object we're reducing, right? So if we bring that down to a 30% opacity, right, we're not going to be removing the whole thing. We're only going to be keeping 30% of it. So, there could be times when you might do that. There might be certain, situations. They're going to be pretty rare. They're going to be pretty special. So most of the time, I'm working at an opacity of 100. So let's take a look now. If we come over and we're just going to increase our brush a little bit, and we got the spot healing tool, and let's say we want to remove this sign. Let's see what kind of job the spot healing tool does on this. So we're going to do that, and you're going to see that it took it away, right? Almost like we had a 10% opacity filter on that. It took it away for the most part, but not all the way. So we could go over it again and see what kind of result we get here. And that did a fairly good job. But if we look a little bit closer, and I'm not sure if you can pick this up on the video, you'll see that there are a little bit of blurry pixels right here, right? It's a little obvious that we did something there, and there's some artifacts that are kind of remaining. And so for that reason, I'm not thrilled with how this removed the object, but we could spend a little bit more time on it, fine tune it, and get it to where we need to be, but it's going to be a little bit more of a time investment. So if we reset the photo, we might want to think about this in another way. This might be a little too complex for the spot healing tool, but I do want to point out that there are times when the spot healing tool will be our tool of choice because it's quick and it has a degree of accuracy that's going to be perfectly acceptable. So maybe we want to do something like removing the stick. So what I would do is I would get a small brush. We kind of want to always have a brush that's just a little bit bigger than the object we want to remove. And I would go over that stick, and you see it removes it, and we're not dealing with any artifacts. It just removed that stick very easily, very quickly. This tool is very fast when removing items like that, removing sticks, removing leaves, right? So if we're in our wildlife photos and we want to clean up some of those things like that, the spot healing tool is the way to go. Tool works very, very well. But if we want to remove bigger things, such as this sign, then we're going to start looking at this eraser tool. And by the way, just to digress a little bit, this little sign that you see here, this is a place that I do a lot of wildlife photography. As a matter of fact, I shoot at this location pretty much on a daily basis. There's a lot of great birds here. This is a huge lagoon. To the left of this sign, going down to the left is a lot of water area, still part of the lagoon, and then to the right, the same thing. And I'm able to stay on this side of the lagoon and go to the left and right, and there are various locations along the side of the lagoon that I can actually photograph the wildlife here. Lots of birds, lots of different kinds of birds, and it's great. Of course, with a sign like this that says alligators may live here, do not feed or disturb them, I pay attention to signs like that. And trust me, alligators do live here. I've had a couple run-ins with some of them over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, I'm okay, but nonetheless, still scares the hell out of you. So I tend to make it a habit of not going in to the water to cross over to the other side of the lagoon, because I like to stay out of alligator-infested water. And I find that photography is a little easier with two arms. So for those reasons, I don't go in the water. But this sign is here, and you pay attention to it when you are living in South Carolina and you know there are gators in the water. But what if we wanted to remove this sign and not alert the next person coming? So we could go in and we could grab our eraser tool and we could just go over this, and I could choose a bigger brush here, but this should do a pretty good job. We don't have to really do this. I'm just doing it because I'm in here, but if I let go, this should choose the sign pretty good. Yeah. And one thing that we can do here, because you'll notice it didn't get the white part of the sign down here. We have the ability, just like when we did masking in that video, we showed you how you can add and subtract to a mask that you choose in Lightroom. We can do the same thing here. So we're going to add to our mask, and we're just going to highlight this little white pole and include that as well. Now, once we have everything that we want selected and we have a good selection here, we can go over and hit apply. And we're going to let Lightroom Classic run through its formulation, its analysis, right? And we're going to see what it gives us. Now, I've done this prior to doing this video. I just wanted to run a test to see what it did. The first time, it was perfect, just like this. The second time I did it, it took the sign out and gave me a bird in the location. This is what I'm talking about with these tools. Sometimes they are infuriating and you get completely different results that make no sense. What you can see though is this did a fantastic job. This completely removed the sign. We have no blurred pixels, so we have no artifacts left behind. You would never know if you were just looking at this image that there was a sign here. So it did a great job, but there's one other thing that I want you to look at, because let's say it didn't do the best job for you. If you come over here underneath this tool and come down just a little bit under the opacity slider, you're going to see variations. And there's 3 different variations that Lightroom gives us when it does this AI generation here. So if we didn't like this first option, we could click the arrow to go to option number 2, and let's see what happens. You see that there was a change in the photo, right? There was a change in the grass, and it was right through this area. So I'm going to go back to variation number 1 again. I want you to watch this area. And you can see what it does there. Just changes the grass, right? And let's go to number 3 now, see what it changes, because it's probably going to be in that exact same spot. Yeah, and it gives us another version. Now, 3 works. And again, if you didn't know that there was a sign there and that we just moved something and that there weren't other variations, this would look perfectly fine to you. You would never know. But when you see the other variations, it becomes clear. And I think 1 and 2 are much better variations. And I would select one of those, and I would probably stick with 1 because I like the way the higher grass is here. I think that just looks a little bit nicer for my taste. But either one works. All 3 actually work, but I like 1 and 2. Now, if we didn't like any of those 3 variations, we're not stuck. We can come over here and go to the refresh tool. And if we click that, Lightroom is now going to reanalyze the scene, and it's going to come up with 3 new variations for us. We can keep doing this until we get something that we like. So here are the new variations. This is 1, 2, and 3. Now, I think we got 3 better variations overall, but I don't think anything is better than option 1 or 2 that we had originally. So I would be completely happy with any of these options, to be honest with you. I kind of like 2 the best here. And so this one worked out really, really well. And you can see how quickly we were able to do that. We don't have any blurred pictures or blurred pixels or artifacts that we're going to have to go back and clean up. So we were able to get a really good edit here very quickly. So those are the tools for removing inside of Lightroom Classic. Again, the eraser tool is big for those bigger, more complex edits. The spot healing brush is great for removing leaves or maybe the Spanish moss, little twigs and sticks, little easy things that aren't very complex. You can see that we can do it very quickly and efficiently. I don't recommend really using the clone tool. I've never had much success with it. I don't really like how it performs personally. It's something that you can try out and experiment with. And if you like it, certainly add it to your workflow. But the spot healing tool and the eraser tool are where it's at for me. So now we are going to just reset this photo. And what I want to do now is take a look at some of the tools inside Photoshop. So let's take this and we're going to go edit and we're going to take it right into Photoshop. And that's how easy it is to get into Photoshop. And now all we have to do is click Photoshop and there it is. It's in here right now. So you'll see that Photoshop is a little bit different as far as the setup when compared to Lightroom. But really for the purposes of this, all we need to know is that our tools go along the left-hand side of our screen. And when we look at tools and we see this little arrow here, that means that there are additional tools inside of this particular selection. So if we click and hold the left mouse button, you see that will fly open and it'll show you all the tools available there. Well, what I want to show you first of all is the lasso tool, and that's in this first selection. Now, the lasso tool has been a tool that's been in Photoshop for quite a while, and it's always worked really well. And it works well by using content aware as part of the algorithm for determining what we're replacing. Let's evaluate that area and around it, and we'll figure out what's happening with the scene, and we'll figure out those pixels and replace them with what we think is correct. So very similar to what we did in Lightroom, we're going to take this tool and we're just going to draw a little freehand line around, and that's going to select our object. So anything inside that, it's going to select. Now we can add or subtract from our selection and fine tune it and all those great things. But with the lasso tool, we basically have two options that I recommend for replacing the object. The first thing that we could do is we can come down here to this little bucket, and that'll allow us to fill. And we want to always use content aware fill for these situations. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to say, okay, you want to do content aware. We want our mode to always be normal, and then we want our opacity to be 100%. And we're just going to click OK. And we're going to see what Photoshop gives us. And you see, very similar to what happened in Lightroom, we have some artifacts here. Look at that. Hope you can pick this up on the video. But we have some pixels here that are very blurry. And you can almost see right here in the center, the pixels are fine. But here, they're very blurry. And we got a lot of artifacts here. So it doesn't look the best, right? We can kind of tell something's been removed there. Now, again, this is one of those edits that we could continue to massage and manipulate and get it to where it's an acceptable edit. But how much time do you want to spend on it, right? We could just go back to Lightroom, use the eraser tool, highlight it, click it, and be done with it. We don't need to go through multiple edits. So not the best result, but it's got us fairly close. So what if we used the lasso tool now, did the same thing, and highlighted our object, but this time, instead of doing the bucket and doing the content aware fill, we just did a generative fill. Very similar to what Lightroom was kind of doing, right? Well, again, this is kind of the weird thing that happens inside of Photoshop. If I hit generate, and I don't put anything in here because I don't want it to fill with anything, this is where the AI can be a little bit finicky. And so it's going to go through, it's going to be doing its thing as far as, generating and analyzing. And you can see that it's going to do the same thing that it did in Lightroom. And now this came out really good because in my testing, it filled it in with a bird every single time. Now this time it filled it in with nothing. But We could click on option, right? Gives us those 3 options like it did in Lightroom. If we click on option 2, it gives us a squirrel standing on the back of its feet. And if we click on option 3, it gives us another version with different grasses back here. Very similar to what Lightroom did. Now, I really liked option 1 in this particular scenario. I think that works really well. And so that tool would be a good edit here. And again, if we didn't like the 3 options it gave us, if we came up here and hit generate, we would get 3 new options. So we can continue to do that until we get something that we like. But that is the lasso tool. And this is one of those tools that I would keep in your bag of tools, your arsenal, if you will, when it comes to object removal, because maybe Lightroom doesn't work, but you can come in and use this lasso tool. And even though it's very similar to Lightroom, you're going to get different results. You're going to get a different set of options for how to fix this. So that is a good option there, is the lasso tool. So remember that one, file that one away. And then the other one that I would really recommend is if we come down to the Band-Aid, very similar, right? We got a spot healing brush tool, very similar to that used in Lightroom. This is another great tool that would be great to use for removing the sticks, right? So we can do those sticks and those types of things. Whoops. We're just going to move that bar out of the way and just go back and select that again. There we go. Okay, so if we use that tool, you can see once again, it removed that stick very easily, very quickly. No artifacts left behind. And quite honestly, I think the spot healing tool, even though it works pretty good in Lightroom Classic, I do like the one and have always liked the way it works in Photoshop better. I don't know if there's an actual difference as far as how the two work, but I've always felt like Photoshop spot healing tool works a little better. Now, there is a little different version inside of Photoshop of the spot healing brush. It's called the healing brush tool. The only difference is that you have to do what they call select a source. So if we wanted to maybe fill this dirt patch in with grass, if we on a Mac click the option key, you see we get this little target. If we left mouse click with our button on the grass, what we're telling Photoshop is that we want to fill that brown patch with the grass. So we select the grass and then we come over here and paint over our dirt spot and fill it in with grass. So you can see that that works very well. So it's just a slight difference from the spot healing brush. Again, that is the healing brush tool, and you need to use the source where you pick a target and then paint over the part you want to repair. Okay, good. So if we undo that, the next tool that I wanted to show you is the patch tool. And the patch tool works very similar to these two, except you're going to highlight the area that you want to fix. So we're going to take this dirt spot, and then we're just going to simply click and drag it to the area that we want it to look like. So we're just going to click it below on this grass, and there. You can see just by that, it filled it in with that grass, and you'd never know that there was a bare spot there. So that works really good. Now, looking at these tools, we would not use the spot healing brush tool, the healing brush tool, or the patch tool to remove this sign. We kind of already saw what will happen inside of Lightroom if we try to use tools like that, right? Not the most effective way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in to the clone tool here. I want to show you this. This is not really a tool that I would recommend using this either, but let's say that, you wanted to replace some of that grass that we just did. The clone tool would be another option. This works like the healing brush tool where you have to click a source. So we're going to click the option key. We're going to left mouse click on the grass, and then we're just going to paint over this. It's just going to clone in what we chose. So we can do this every time we move. We want to click a new source so that we're as close to that as possible. But we could go through and clone these little areas in and just fine tune some of those details and clean it up a little bit. Now we could, if we wanted to, go really slow. We could clone the grass and we could paint over this pole, right? And we can just keep kind of doing our source. And we could slowly paint this sign out of the picture by using the clone tool. It works, not effective, takes forever. That's not the tool that we would go with, but you can see what we can do with the clone tool here. The other thing that we could do with the clone tool is, let's say we wanted to add a sign. If we go on the sign and we click that as our source by holding the Option key with the left mouse button, we can come in over here and actually just bring in another sign. So we can actually clone something to duplicate it. So this is another option that we can do with the clone tool. Honestly, I don't really ever use the clone tool for duplicating or replicating anything. I like to use it more to paint out like the brown spots in the grass or something like that, because it works pretty good there. But I just want to show you some options that you have with this tool. Let's go to the eraser tool here. And if we click on that, actually, I want to go to, let's go to the patch tool, because I want to go to the remove tool under here. All right, so now we got the remove tool underneath these brushes, which we were just looking at a few minutes ago. So if we go to the remove tool and we paint over our subject here, our object, and we're going to, whoops, I let go too soon there. I'm just going to start that over. So we'll click over here and we'll just paint over our object and get this fully covered before letting go of the left mouse button. And now I do that and the remove tool is going to work, and you're going to see that it did a pretty good job. Now, again, when I tested this, the remove tool took this out perfectly, just like it did in Lightroom Classic. But here we can see that it left some blurry pixels. But we could just come over here and go back over this, and once again, it can fix those pixels. But you see, it's still continuing to do that, right? So in this particular case, the remove tool worked great during the testing, and it's not working all that wonderfully here. But the remove tool in Lightroom Classic worked beautifully and left us with no artifacts. So these are the tools, again, inside of Photoshop. So we got the lasso tool, we have the spot healing tool, the remove tool, the healing brush tool, as well as the patch tool. And then we also looked at the clone stamp tool. So most of these tools are great ways to clean up little detailed items like leaves, bare spots in the grass, or this Spanish moss that fell on the ground. These types of tools can do a great job when removing those types of items. But when it comes to removing these bigger signs and more complex edits, you're going to want to use those remove tools and the eraser tools, both in Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, because we're going to get better results. Again, if you are not getting the result you want in either one of these programs, then switch to the other one and try that tool. It may just be an edit that you do have to take several steps and you do have to spend a little bit more time on. That is the nature of photo editing sometimes. But these tools are going to go a long way in helping you to clean up unwanted items in your photos. All right, so what I want you to do for your homework is go take some pictures, try removing some things from your photos, see how it works for you, try Lightroom Classic, try Photoshop, try the remove tools in whatever photo editor you're using, and give it a go. Use smaller brushes first, as small as you can go while still covering the object, and see if you get a better result as opposed to using a bigger brush. These are all little tricks that can help to get better results. What do you think about the remove tools? What tools are your favorites? Let me know in the comments below. If you're using these tools for the first time, let me know which tool you use and which tool you prefer. Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, if you found this helpful, consider subscribing to the channel. We're going to continue to produce videos just like this to help everyone get better as wildlife photographers and wildlife photo editors. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care.